473 in Confero. We freedom of speech is sacrosanct. Make use of it. Let no one challenge. Blow your shell, beat your drum, tell others. Like and share, subscribe and discuss it too. Let the world know Studio Galaxy is around. Galaxy in Confero, hope you know. 473 standing strong is yours, you know. The medium, an opportunity for you. Make your contribution, let them know. Blow your shell, beat your drum, tell others. Like and share, subscribe and discuss it too. Let the world know Studio Galaxy is a road. Chinese and lucky like we. Iran and North Korea wish they had it too. Most of the Caribbean lucky like we. Studio Galaxy Day for you and me. Blow your shell, beat your drum, tell other. I can share, subscribe and do. Let the world know Studio Galaxy is around. Studio Galaxy in Confero, hope you know. 473 standing.
Yes, welcome, brothers, welcome, sisters. We on to the second part of our program, Pure Politics. Every Saturday, that part of the program is perhaps the most important one to me. And you're on Studio Galaxy 473 in Confero. And with the Galaxy Equalizers. And we're very fortunate today to have the leader of the opposition with us to talk about this and that. It's always good to have you. Last week, the leader of the opposition was with us, but technology and when you are old juvenile involved in technology, you want to get involved in the technology, but you're old. Sometimes it is a challenge. But we must never give up. We continue and we are very happy that you grace us with our presence today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sometimes when I want to refer to the leader of the opposition, I say leader of the opposition, I say Emlyn Pierre, I say mom, I say sister, I say daughter. The last time I was calling her and say daughter. And she say, I'm not your daughter. I say, I know. Use me sister. We came from the same ancestors in Africa. And I say, when we refer to you as daughter, trust me, we hold you in high esteem. Welcome, sister.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you to all of the viewers and the listeners who stayed on, because I know some of them expected me on at 11. But of course, I guess Studio Galaxy, this and that don't always go according to the plan.
Yes, we say to people, we provoke discussion on this program. 1 hour, you hardly could do justice to any topic, but we want people to discuss topic. I'm a very strong Caribbean person. I'm always involved in politics. Not very close to any political party, but I'm more politician than a lot of people involved in politics in Grenada. I'm a Caribbean man. And I believe in CARICOM. I believe in unity. I find CARICOM was not achieving what they want to achieve fast enough. But when I look at the European Union, I say we're going good. We're going slow, but we did. But I get worried. I see Ralph Gonzal and my brother in Antigua and etc. and Trinidad. And it seems as though some of the leaders get a little fatigued. Maybe they want things to move faster. You're a young sister in it. I want you to tell us your views, your position on CARICOM, whether you're going to add new blood and new leadership to the unity process in CARICOM.
Of course, let me start by saying I think the very principles and the very reason for which CARICOM was established, when you go back to the treaty, when you go back to all of the discussions over all of the years, there's nothing that has changed that says it is not relevant today. As a matter of fact, we probably need this now more than ever when we look at what is happening on the international stage. And as you said, it's very unfortunate when you hear leaders making public statements at this time that seems to indicate that we are becoming more divided on the issue, more divided on where we are going. And personally, I feel very strongly about Caribbean unity. I feel very strongly about CARICOM, and our party also feels the same way. We've been very supportive of all of the actions to be taken to facilitate and to move forward. But I want to say this, it requires every country individually to have that same level of commitment, because you see, it has always been about togetherness, and it cannot be about anything else. And so for me, I feel very strongly about this. We need to be speaking in one voice. We need to be doing this together. And I really do hope that the heads right now, currently, would find it within themselves to sit down, to reestablish the whole purpose, to remind themselves of why CARICOM is being pushed, and to ensure that we are moving forward with one voice. As a party, as I said, we are still very committed to this, and I'm very committed in terms of pushing and ensuring that Grenada is still on board as it relates to our side. I mean, we're not in government, but as it relates to our side, we'll continue to champion the need for Caribbean unity.
Having studied some of the leaders in the Caribbean, it could be a little fatigue and a number of the younger politicians challenging them on the economic importance of CARICOM. So they have to be encouraged, and they have to know that there are younger blood in the leadership that feel strongly as how they felt many years ago.
Then. We can't afford to get tired. We can't afford to get weary. As I said, right now, this is even more relevant for us in this region. When you look at what is happening on the global stage, when you look at the high cost of living, when you look at what is happening in terms of trade and all of the risk within the environment, all of the potential barriers, that can seriously impact trade. And really, how are we going to survive? It's a survival, right? So we have to look at all of these things. We hear a lot of talk, and I think to a large extent, when you listen, different leaders, you get in different languages, and we have to be so careful. We need to be speaking in one voice. And so when you look at what is happening within the setting of CARICOM, and I was recently at a CARICOM activity, and I listened to about 3 different leaders. And if you dissect what they were saying, really and truly, you get 3 different feelings from we can't afford at this time. I mean, we've been on this road for too long to be turning back now. We've been on this road for too long to be pulling apart. And whether you've been there long, as a matter of fact, those who've been in the vineyard a very long time, in my opinion, should be the greatest advocate for staying on track, And just to go back as it relates to one of the conversations, the whole issue of South-South trade, right? And, you listen to some of those conversations and you ask yourself, how are we truly going to accomplish those things if we are thinking of going individually? We could change our minds about alternative trade if we are not thinking of going as a bloc, uniting our efforts, thinking of economies of scale, right? We're very small individually. We don't have what it takes individually to win this battle. We have to do it collectively. And I'm very concerned, very worried that you're getting a very, I don't even want to say slight, a strong sense that we are no longer united on this vision of one region. And even when you speak about free movement, so sometime last year there was a pronouncement as it relates to free movement, albeit on the local level, we were hearing it outside. So there was no consultation locally. There was no announcement to update people of what was happening, but there was a change as it relates to a target, as it relates to free movement. Now, from what I gathered, we got an update about 2 months ago, and what I gathered is that some countries that would have made commitments started to pull back on their commitments. And so, where we are now is sort of reestablishing timelines as it relates to that particular target. Now, we won't ever be successful at this if we don't keep together, stay together, and focus ourselves on what is it that we are aiming to achieve.
I like when you say we won't. And I hope that voice is loud and clear. I have chastised African countries and the Caribbean countries for some of the issues that are going on in Russia and Ukraine and Israel today. Not that they're responsible. Not that they could come in and stop them from fighting. But their voice wasn't powerful enough for peace. I believe we in the Caribbean must be a voice for peace. And I would like to hear your voice. I hear you say won't. I would like to hear your voice for peace. The issue in Israel and Gaza and Iran, let us sit down and make peace. Let's work together. Let's negotiate. Whether it's in
unity,
Russia,
there's always
Ukraine,
strength.
that must be the voice that comes from the Caribbean.
Unity is always strength. And that one voice, you see, the enemy, and let's put it that way, the enemy would always look for a loophole. The enemy would always look for a weak link within the chain. And so that one voice, that singular voice, is always, always important. But you made mention about peace, and sometimes it's really sad. When you look at the lives lost, the children, the elderly, and you wonder, how is it that adults, civilized people, leaders, cannot sit down and have discussion looking at the bigger picture? How can we be so comfortable looking at the mass destructions that is happening and not have some kind of, as people would say, something juke your conscience that it tells you, hey, we need to look at the bigger picture. And so it's important that the Caribbean remain a voice that is united, both on regional and international issues.
I had a friend once that used to say, I used to work with him. I don't think you remember my name now. But he used to say, that was Oliver Joseph. He used to say, the things we don't agree on, let's put it in the refrigerator, and let's work with those things that we agree on. I don't know if you remember, that was a lot of years ago.
And very often, there is far more that unites us than what divides us. And as you say, if we could concentrate on what unites us, what we have common consensus on, what you would find is this world would be a better place. But unfortunately, we focus on the one thing or the two things that we disagree on, and that becomes the primary thing that we fight over, right? And whether, as I said, internationally, regionally, whatever it is, because I'm sure within the region, different countries have serious justifications, valuable reasons why they have some concerns. For example, free movement to its fullest extent, right? Quite obviously, some people have concerns of security, right? Some countries have concerns as it relates to social development, economic activities, and so on, and how that is going to impact their local national budget, for example. But as I said, what is it that we have common consensus on, and how could we get those going well? And how could we, along the way, provide support? Because we have to face it, they are the smaller, they're also the weaker, right? And those, as has been articulated so far, they have to receive additional support. So you can't just treat CARICOM as one space, forgetting that Grenada may not be at the same level to implement certain things as compared to another country. And so the question is, as an institution, is it necessary that more support needs to go to Grenada as it relates to the implementation of a particular objective or target that
A few
CARICOM
years
sets?
ago, I was in a discussion, and they were speaking about violence in the Caribbean. I say if them Jamaican criminal want to taste Grenada jail, jail them in Grenada. If Grenada criminal want to go in St. Vincent, jail them in St. Vincent. But let us have freedom of movement. We have enough jail to jail those criminals, and not even wasting time to send them back, because we seem to be using that as an excuse. The majority of people in the Caribbean are not criminals. There's a few criminals here, but we seem to be using that as an excuse not to unite.
Well,
I
in
believe-
fairness to some countries, and let's contextualize the issue of free movement. Many years ago, it would have been just citizens of the various countries and people who are citizens generally by birth, one or two outside of that. But we've added a number of dimensions to this conversation. So let's take, for example, the CBI program, right? You have a situation where in 1 year, you have over 4,000, almost 5,000 additional citizens in a particular country, and Grenada, for example. I don't have this specific figure, but I was reliably informed that since 2022 to now, we might be around 12,000 in terms of passports sold, which exceeds the total number of passports sold under the program prior to 2022. From the inception, the start of the program to 2022, what we've sold between 2022 and 2025 exceeds the entire period, right? So obviously, there are persons who are now looking at this issue of who is a citizen from a different angle. So you and I might be looking at it from a narrow angle of just you and I moving to Jamaica, moving. So somebody is saying, okay, now that doesn't include just Francis Pay and Emmeline Pay and, you know, some guy down the road. It also includes somebody from China, somebody from Nigeria. And while some people might be quite comfortable with the fact that you've passed these people in terms of your vetting for citizenship, they are now wondering, how comfortable should I be with every single, let's say the 12,000 from Grenada, in terms of vetting for free movement, right? So there are some genuine concerns, and it means that we have to ensure, and sometimes, you know, it's okay to have concerns, it's okay to raise red flags, but we must now put systems in place. So for example, are we increasing the requirements as it relates to due diligence, for example? How do we make everyone comfortable that the due diligence done in Grenada is of a certain standard? What is done in St. Kitts is of a certain standard. Dominica, that there's a standard across the board that Jamaica could say, well, it doesn't matter if it's by birth
And that means
or
we have
through
to
the
have-
CBI program.
We have to have confidence in our brain. Brainstorm and come up with answers.
Well, not just in our brain, the political will is also important. Because if the US has to say, for example, to Grenada, hey, stop processing applications to a certain country, we have some concerns, what we are seeing, what we are picking up. And then if people can say comfortably that even when these
You're a human
instructions were
being.
given,
You're a human being, we taking you with nobody.
but not only that, when the processing happens under the counter, so to speak, and that is known publicly, that is known locally and internationally, then of course you give people reasons
opening up
to
the door.
question and to
Mashing
open
up
up
the guardrails.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it means that when we speak free movement, we cannot just say that some people are inconsiderate and they don't want to open up their doors. They have genuine concerns, and I believe the leaders of the region must commit that they are going to satisfy all of those concerns by taking decisive actions, putting certain policies in place to alleviate the fear, the concerns that some people may genuinely
I
have.
like to hear say decisive action. Amanda Jack. I've heard that name. And I have been very upset because post 1983, the electoral process in Grenada has been admired throughout the Caribbean. People who work in the electoral process feel good. Election finish, one side crying, but they concede defeat and they're satisfied with the process. And now we have Amanda Jack.
And you know where I'm going to start this conversation? I'm going to start my response to this conversation with a name that you're very much familiar with, Evelyn Frederick, right? When I started in politics, frontline politics, I was introduced to Mr. Frederick as the registration officer for St. Andrew Southeast. And I'm sure that as you think of that name and the role that he played, there's just one word that probably comes to mind: professionalism. And maybe if we add a few more, because there'll be several others, fairness, right? So from my experience in this matter, there has always been, and I'm speaking specific now for my constituency, persons who carry a certain level of professionalism from way back as Evelyn Frederick when I started. I've never come across a situation where I had to question. I've never seen them, and there are three that I can think of since I've been in this role. I've never seen them in political activities. I've never heard them discuss politics. There's always a professional front when they engage you, right? There's a standard that you're used to expect. And I am sure, throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, that has been the case.
That has been the
Right?
modus operandi.
The modus operandi.
You don't jig with that.
This is something we don't play
don't
around
jig
with.
with that. I've
As a
been
matter
around.
of fact, the selection process is supposed to be so rigorous that you vet for people of a certain caliber when it comes to their reputation and when it comes to how professional they are, how unbiased they are as it relates to fulfilling this very serious obligation. So let us speak about
Amanda Jack.
Madam Jack. So I met the individual some years ago in my capacity as Minister for Education. Wonderful person. This individual, I still have a photograph of her, presented me with a book that she wrote. So let me say this up front. I have no problem with Amanda Jack, a wonderful person in my opinion. But let me hasten to say that I do not believe that currently Amanda Jack is fit to continue to hold the position as registration officer for Carriacou and Petite Martinique by virtue of her very action within the last probably year or two. I'm talking about actively participating in a political activity, not once, more than once. And when I say actively, now, if I stand way off in an activity and looking on, one might describe that as slightly different to being in the midst of the activity with a flag in my hand waving, clapping and shouting.
Militant.
Very militant.
He's a militant of
That
the NDC.
is totally unacceptable. And it
Contaminant for the electoral process.
It cannot happen. It cannot continue. Now, in addition to that, I had the opportunity to read Amanda's report because, of course, we wrote to the Governor General. the Governor General asked the Supervisor of Elections to investigate the matter. The matter was investigated, and one of the things that was required as part of the investigation was for Amanda to respond in writing. The Governor General would have submitted back a report. And when I look at Amanda's report, I have to say this. The content of that report tells me that Amanda Jack is not suited to be the registration officer for Carriacou and Petimani. Now, if you end up in an activity, and let us just use an example. The officer in question, let us use the women's arm activity. I believe the whole of Grenada knew that the National Democratic Congress was having a women's convention. Let us add to that, I believe, similar to the NNP, a women's convention is not just an open activity. It's something where delegates, strong supporters of the party attend a women's convention. Now, Amanda explains that notable persons in Grenada, in that case, a particular individual in the education sector, was the individual who invited her and carried her along to the activity. Now, let us dissect this. You're a registration officer. You're invited by an activist of the NDC to an event of the NDC. So let us, for worst case argument, let us say you didn't know where you were going. And I hate to believe this. I will never believe that she did not know where she was going. I think it would be dishonest for anybody to try to give that perception. But you get to the activity. From the very entry, on the very entry, you must know that is an NDC activity. So the question is, how did you find yourself in the middle of the room participating in the activity? It tells me that your level of judgment on these matters is so poor that you are not fitted and suited to be a registration officer.
She's a militant.
She can be many other things and a commander for other things, but not a registration officer. And of course, the other activity that was an open public activity, of course. Now, a registration officer is supposed to have, if nothing else, good judgment. Again, distinguished figure of the National Democratic Congress invites you to the activity. You go along. My God, from way off, and every single person in Grenada knew that the NDC was having a rally, right? Everybody in Grenada knew that. So you're invited. Worst case scenario, again, let us say the person did not tell you what the activity is, so you thought you were going to church.
You have been very gentle and understanding.
You get...
I have asked, I understand the person is a peer. So that means it's my cousin, my family. I'd ask him to resign because, and I would love if he continue and advocate for him to go to jail. Because the electoral process in Grenada has been better than most in the Caribbean. So this militant of the NDC should be fired. And you and your team must call for her to go.
Well, it's not a matter of calling for her to go. Let me say this. We wrote to the Governor General, who ultimately has responsibility and oversight over this. We wrote on 2 occasions. We've highlighted the sections of the law where this individual, by her very action, has gone overboard. And we have called for action on this matter. The response we got was that the matter was investigated, a note would be placed on her file, and she would receive a warning. We wrote back to say that this is unacceptable, that the individual must be removed from her current position. As I said before, she is not fit to serve in this position. And the activities, the level of participation, the militancy is totally unacceptable. To me, it goes beyond just unacceptable. It's illegal. You cannot be conducting yourself like this because what it does is contravenes sections of the law as it relates to your behavior as a public officer and someone in that particular position.
Definitely, and I have on my program. I don't pet that subject. There are some subjects are not petting in Grenada, and one of them is when you see effort to contaminate the electoral process. And I believe the supervisor of election, I'm giving him some time to resign if the Governor General refused to fire Amanda Jack. Amanda Jack is a militant. He's a combatant. Amanda Jack seems to be an apologist, a political.
Let me also add to
of the
that.
NDC.
We have brought this matter in recent times to the regional media. As you know, there has been cases in the past, not very long ago in Trinidad. There was a similar matter where an individual was dismissed according to the information we received. So we have brought it regionally, and we are going to also seek the intervention of international organizations, especially those who normally would be here to observe, to ensure that we have a free and fair election, such as the Commonwealth. And so we are giving them time to take the necessary action, but at the same time, we are going to continue to bring attention to this very serious matter.
We cannot have you on this program if we don't talk about corruption. I have been in town long, been in town very long, and be actively involved in the processes in Grenada, whether it is the electoral process as a public officer, Grenada Trade Union Council, you name it. The level of corruption I'm seeing here baffles the mind. And I believe Deacon Mitchell is the corruptor in chief. It is difficult to understand because it is not in the interest of the NDC. So, my question is, the Grenada Development Bank, what the opposition is doing to find out the names. I am also aware when questions are asked in Parliament, the challenge that you all have, to find out the names of the ministers and directors and close associates of the NDC that get money illegally from the Grenada Development Bank.
So one of the questions that would be tabled in Parliament very soon would be that specifically. And I'm sure we've had one of the unanswered one, I have to double check that, which relates to that same subject matter. So you're right. There are many questions posed that is still unanswered, right? Many questions. We are going to continue, but we're also going to use other means to get answers as well to those questions. But you're absolutely right. What is happening now is unprecedented. It's record-breaking as it relates to some of the things that are being said, some of the things that are observed, and, out of this world, for example. And it is not just a situation where the law says that a member of Parliament, let's be specific to this case, should not be a member of government, should not be a minister of government, should not be accessing a loan from the Grenada Development Bank. What I think is crazy is that while the law is so clear on this matter, the Prime Minister and other ministers are out defending the actions. So you choose to use the bank to give a loan, and it worries.
You forgot to use the word illegally.
Illegally, you choose to do that, and at the same time, you stand up and defend it. And that is what is frightening. Is like you have no regards at all for the law. None at all. And when you look at what has happened in this case, it is not just about a minister getting a loan and that is illegal. That's one thing. There are two things that we need to pay attention to. The second thing is that ordinary citizens who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of this institution and the resources there are being denied. Ordinary people seeking 10,000, 5,000, 15,000, and several of them call you. I had a case only yesterday of a woman who is trying her best, single parent, applied for $10,000 in the bank, and she was told that she does not qualify. Now, I asked her, and I said to her, please go back to the bank to find out what makes you a person who is not qualified. Why is it that you did not qualify? Because I want to compare that. Whatever is the reason, I want to compare that to a minister of government where the law says he does not qualify. I want to compare that to the response that you get. So there are two issues. You see people fighting. Fishermen, for example, want to have get an engine, for example. You know, your engine gave up and you don't have the resources. You want to go to, that's the first place you think of. And you're being turned down. You're told you don't qualify. You're not qualified. The question is, what qualifies a minister of government? Absolutely nothing. It is illegal, according to the law, for a minister of government to get a loan at the Grenada Development Bank. It is illegal.
Sister, this level of corruption that I'm hearing warrants a debate in Parliament. National lottery. This one is what we are hearing on the ground. And I know, they fire the whistleblower.
That's why I say it's unprecedented what is happening. Because at the end of the day, this particular case is not a case where somebody in the general public says they think and they hear and they guess. This is a member of the government pointing out corruption. A member of the government
not
highlighting.
Not Johnny Simon. Not
that is the point. It is not somebody who is anti-government that was making those allegations and pointing directly to say that they are no longer allegations. I have evidence that these things are happening. And so I want the leader to look into them and to take action. And rather than dealing with the issues, rather than ensuring the issues are dealt with, the Prime Minister turns around and fires the individual. And that is why I said what's happening as it relates to the subject is unprecedented.
But this one again is so much of them. So I have to gloss over them. Because I provoke discussion here. The CBI program. If you have some of the names that we are hearing, they are senior members of the NDC. And I'm just hearing Nazim Buck. I don't know if it's true. And they're very conservative with their information. But we beg them that if you are involved in selling passport, who is going to do the check and balance? Mm-hmm. And now we are hearing these issues with the CBI.
And that is why when we speak about conflict of interest, the interest has to be the individual in question. So if you are personally benefiting from an activity that you are presiding over, that you are managing, that's when we can speak about conflict of interest, because you are personally benefiting. It's going in your pocket personally. And that is what we have to pay attention to. So you cannot be the person ruling, making a ruling, approving, right? So it comes to cabinet and you say, yes, this person, Francis Pierce, should be a citizen of Grenada. When, in truth and in fact, your company is processing the application for Francis Pierce, or persons close to you are processing the application for Francis Pierce, and you are personally benefiting. And that there, I mean, how worse can it get? So you're attending functions. So the Prime Minister involved in CBI activities through his organization, his company, and then the Prime Minister sits in cabinet, approves, and then the Prime Minister goes to all of those conferences. And sometimes I wonder, in what capacity? Are you going in relation to your business, or are you going in relation to the country? And so this whole CBI thing, it's frightening. And when you look at the numbers, almost 5,000 in 1 year. When you look at the numbers, you have to ask yourself, why are they so high? Why are they so high? Is it about making money for individuals,
Ralph
or is it about the
Gonzalez
country?
they're selling passports as fast as they can, as quick as they can, to make as much money as they can.
No, this is frightening. It
But
is frightening.
the structural adjustment program in Grenada, we have had 3 structural adjustment programs, and in each case, workers suffered, or better say, they make sacrifice. And we have had a structural adjustment program where we had the debt service levy, and the last one where we initiated economic discipline. We put guardrails, and I see the dismantling of those rails. What is your position on that? I mean, this sometimes, because this thing is not a tangible thing. It's not close your road that brick. So people don't
Yeah, people
see
don't
that.
give it the attention as.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't pay much attention to the tangible. Because if we dismantle the guardrails, the procurement, how you call it?
Procurement rules.
Yes, that is where you was given 15,000, now it's 100,000.
100.
And the discipline that we have, the economic discipline, when you dismantle that, become a open sepulchre, is corruption galore.
And I like the use of the word discipline, because I think it is the discipline of the leadership of the NNP and the discipline that we would have shared with people that was necessary, that would have brought us to where we were in 2022. Now, we've been going down a precipice in that regard. So when you look at the growth of the economy back then, consistent growth of the economy, when you look at the measures that were taken by the New National Party, when you look at the efforts to stimulate the economy, and at the same time to provide those safety net opportunities to manage and to buffer and to cushion the rising cost of living. Now, you have to say that the country was very well managed up to that point. Now, this new administration came in. It almost, for me, was like when you give a child a toy for Christmas and they're not sure what to do with it. So you boast you met a pregnant treasury, over $500 million. You boast that you were surprised, you didn't expect this. So now you can do several things. And at the end of the day, you hike up, you jack up the sale of passport through the CBI program, and you boast again over $1 billion in revenue through that program. Now, the recklessness in spending, and let us just use traveling and hosting and entertainment as one example, you feel you have a lot of money, so I can go over the budget by $2 million. And sometimes people confuse that $2 million that I always refer to. It is not the budgeted. It was the excess, the overrun of what was budgeted. So you spend what was budgeted, and then you spend an additional $2 million. Now, obviously, that comfort zone that you're on, that we have a lot of money, things are nice, let's have a good time. Well, that often catches up with you, and catches up really quickly, because it is the reason, that level of recklessness, mismanagement, is the reason why some contractors are telling you months and they can't get paid. I'm sure it's the reason. I am sure it is the reason that even when you announce that students don't have to pay anything for the school feeding program, I'm sure it's the reason that schools cannot get supplies and some children cannot get lunch at school. I am sure it is the reason that several measures that were announced cannot be implemented because, of course, the recklessness in spending and the mismanagement. But let me go back specifically to the rules and the discipline. Now, this is what got us out of the situation that we were in in the past. And this is what was responsible for us getting on a path. Not everybody agreed with some of the measures, but it is what stabilized our situation economically. And we were doing very well. Look at where we are now. Are we experiencing the same level of growth? The answer to that is no. Can consumers, ordinary people, get by daily as they did in 2022 and before? The answer to that is no. Do farmers and fishermen have access to some of the resources and support services that they had back then? The answer is still no. So when you look at what is happening, even the safety net programs, when you look at what is happening now, people have less, but are expected to put out more. And so when you say, for example, it's a great achievement that you've suspended debt payment and you're celebrating that, well, I would imagine that you're doing so because most people would assume that when you say suspend, it is debt forgiveness. Because if you're going to celebrate the suspension of payment of debt, it means that you're probably just trying to catch a few people. Now, most people don't understand that down the road is like kicking the can down the road. Down the road, you have to pay the interest plus the principal.
I don't find the opposition dealt with the suspension of debt because 14 days after the hurricane, they got $118 million.
Right, and that is why we could have been talking about...
It appears they plan to suspend 4 days before the hurricane.
And you see, it's not just the issue of suspension. And I always say this, and former Prime Minister Kit Mitchell said it at a time when people were talking about the debt was too high. And we did a marvelous job of reducing debt and debt to GDP. But he always said this, it is not just about debt, right? Debt is okay if you know how you're paying it, if you're creating the enabling conditions to be able to pay it, if you're able to manage it, right? And so if you're growing the economy, you're incurring debt, and these debt that you're incurring, they're going into productive sectors. You're stimulating the economy, you're creating opportunity, creating jobs. The agriculture sector is improving. You're spending monies on infrastructure that would bring development, road networks, potential. And you're putting those monies that you're borrowing into productive sector, even the monies that you're raising. So let us look at CBI, for example. You're boasting about CBI revenue, but how much of that is going towards recurrent expenditure? So the debt is not the primary issue. It is what are you doing? What are you doing with that? And how are you at the same time channeling resources into the productive sector to ensure that you're actually having productivity increase and you're having an opportunity for people to survive and for people to do well, whether it's in business, whether it's in any other area.
How do we explain to people in Grenada that the dismantling of the guardrails, the procurement legislation, and economic discipline is going to affect the country negatively?
And just before I answer that, let me make the point, because many people don't understand, because that press release was so misleading. So while you spoke about debt to GDP and reduction, you're not saying that between 2022 when you took office to now, you've incurred an additional $730 million in debt. So the debt stock is rising, right? So when you use widely, well, let me say skillfully, words increase and decrease, the motive behind it is not always for us to understand the facts, but it's to play with our minds. When you hear decrease, you start feeling good. So now to the question of that threshold as it relates to government contracts, which I think is what you're hinting to. Now, people don't understand that there are a number of evils that you avoid through this, right? Now, if you're going to open up a door where any individual with the authority, of course, can issue a contract or select a contractor for a project as much as $100,000, that there must be a cause for concern. Must be a cause for concern. Because the next question I'm going to ask you, a project of that size, don't you think that you need a selection process to confirm and to ensure competence?
It will cause disaster.
If you have a minister in a constituency, a parliamentary representative, deciding that Francis Spear is going to do this piece of road because it doesn't have to go to the tenders board, and she gives the name to the chief technical officer, now, it is probably the reason we are seeing some of the challenges that we are seeing out there. And not just in infrastructure and projects of 100,000. It goes all the way down to even our Build Back Better program. Because right in my constituency, you have the challenge where a house is built, and right now a contractor is preparing to break that house and build it over. Think about the cost to the taxpayers of this country. Think about the cost to the taxpayers of this country. So if you look at it from the context of projects under 100,000, there was a reason. There was a reason that NNP had that at 15,000, because those would have been very small projects.
We have a caller on the line. Let's take this caller. Caller, welcome.
Yes, good afternoon to you.
Yes.
Again. Do you have the good lady there with you?
Right here with us, and you can ask the question.
All right, good afternoon to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
I see you're doing very, very well. Congratulations.
Thank you, caller.
I had an audience, I think, a few years ago with you on a subject matter that I think you'll have great interest in at this point in time. It has to do with that area which you represent. I know you know it very well. Croshu, Cafe Croshu Kabi. Yeah? That bridge linking Diamond to Croshu. In demise for quite a number of years. I had been advocating for the development of the area as a mini town. Maho, Croshu, Kabi, or into Latant. That area there. I want to remind you so you could put that on your itinerary. It is timely that that place be developed into what it should be, a highly economic potential area. I know that very well because I school in the Croshu House School, right? So I'd like you to take careful note of that and to make that a priority, just in case you go back there. That should be one of the first areas you would be tackling. I know you might want to do something closer to you, but that is even more critical in terms of what we're trying to achieve. St. David's into that part of St. Andrews as an economic zone. So I want you to take particular note of that.
Yeah.
I am on the ground, and I could lend to any party, doesn't care who, lend my assistance free of charge. I am there to be used as, say, checks, right? Because my thing is young people, the citizenry, and the economy. Yeah? So I'm pressing this and saying it over and over because I want you to pay serious attention to that highly potential economic area of Grenada. It will make a big, big difference in the economic sphere of Grenada. Yeah? So please.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with the caller. As a matter of fact, before the election, I remember scope of works were done for that particular bridge. I'm not sure. I have to double check to see if anything happened after the election, but I know some scope of works and the team from Ministry of Infrastructure were actually there. And in terms of work, in terms of development of that area, if the caller noticed, we started a major infrastructural project there, which of course precedes major development of the magnitude, which of course was also in the pipeline. But you notice the road infrastructure started, serious work was done there, as well as the lighting, working with Grenlec. A project also started in that regard. So I agree with the caller, and of course that must continue, should continue.
Mama,
But just to go back to one other factor as it relates to that threshold of 15 compared to 100. Now, one of the other
time
things,
does fly.
one other things I'll say quickly is that the NMP was also very conscious of small contractors versus large contractors within whether constituency or otherwise. And when you have small contractors, you want to build capacity. You want to give them exposure. And so that size of project would have also helped in terms of, some persons say, splitting the work in such a way that you can assist various persons who are at that level that might not be able to take on the big projects. Now, what we've seen is that many of those small contractors have not been supported because, of course, those bigger projects are what exactly is given priority as it relates to the bidding process. So those small contractors might not have the know-how and they might not have the skills for a certain level. But of course, you want to cater for them within the scheme of things so that you have different levels of project as well. But I believe the biggest factor is that of ensuring that the people who are getting those projects are competent, but also the people who are selecting are doing justice. And the best place to do justice is through the procurement process. And so if we have to increase, we thought that from 15,000 to 100,000 was quite a big jump. And we see what is happening right now. As a matter of fact, many persons have attributed the collapse in closure to exactly what you are raising right now.
We do not have the luxury of time. So I'm going to spend perhaps the next 2 minutes making some statements. You may not be able to react to it, but during your course of exchanges, perhaps another time, you'll give it some consideration. Sometimes in society, we forget those things that are not tangible. So closure, disaster is there, and other issues are there, and some issues the Minister of Foreign Affairs shamed to talk about is there. But this government started with some utterances, some language, like calling people classless, commoners, beggy. I know how these words evoke energy in me. When I was to school, if somebody referred that to me, I walk over him, they'll think it's lightning that pass. In my time, they used to call us dons and illiterates and stinking Garrites. Well, not me, because that person have been on the ground. But when the government called people classless and commoners and beggy and culturally literate, you're trying to find out what goes on in the mind of people. Peasants. This is another word. Eric Gary was a peasant. Keith Mitchell was a peasant. And Tillman Thomas, they consider him as a peasant. And I don't have to tell you, obvious you. Because that is the last hope for them. If this peasant sister become the prime minister, that is the last hope for them.
Mother hen.
So there is no stop. I ain't dealing with Mother Hen yet. You don't tell. Mother Hen is the extreme revolutionaries. The hardliners. Yeah. But this language and these utterances in people today tells you how big the task is for NNP to explain to the people when you mash up the guardrails, when you break economic discipline, when you expand the procurement legislation to open the door to corruption, and when you see people as classless, for you to explain the challenges that we have.
You know what I mean, time is against us. So what I'm going to say about
That
this
means you need to come back.
is that, of course, I'm I'm going to commit to that. You know what concerns me most about all that you said there is the fact that when leaders speak, followers take a cue. That is what concerns me most. When leaders speak, followers take a cue. So it is not difficult to understand why you have so many Facebook bullies. It is not difficult to understand why there is a measure of fear. I have never seen, in the time that I've been in politics, you might be able to speak for before that, in the time that I've been in politics, I've never seen a time outside of the NNP in office when people are afraid to interact with members of the opposition. When people are victimized because they are perceived to be associated in one way or the other with the opposition. I'm saying this to say, the intolerance that I mash your toe and I'm ready to shoot you with a gun, the intolerance, the level of violence, what is happening, in my opinion, to a very large extent, has a lot to do with the language that we are hearing. Us and them. You already declare war when you talk about us and them. And let me just make this point about victimization. I think this is at its worst in our modern history. And I'll give 2 examples quickly. One police officer, and I said this publicly, some persons heard it. Dr. Mitchell and myself went into a shop that I don't even know up till now if he's the owner of the shop. I assume he is. We walked into that shop, and because that was not our assignment, that's not where we were going, all we did was to shake hands with people in the shop, the men who were standing there drinking and socializing. We shook their hand and went outside to the activity that we came to. The next day, the police officer who apparently owns the shop was called in by a supervisor and asked why he had Emmeline Pear and Kit Mitchell in his shop yesterday. Now, immediately, he was transferred. But let me show you the level of fear that exists in our society that we ought not to take for granted. A couple days ago, I passed on a particular block. There was a cooler of drinks and people seemed to be in a celebratory mood. And I inquired what was happening. And I was told it was a birthday party. And one of the guys immediately said, look, the birthday boy there. Come and take a picture with the birthday. No, I don't know the birthday boy. I don't know where he works. I don't know anything about him. But of course, a birthday is a special thing. So I immediately acceded to the request to take a picture with the birthday boy. The birthday boy was called. He didn't volunteer to take a picture with me. He was called. And we took a picture. Now, of course, I posted all the wonderful people that I met for the day. And it so happened that the birthday boy was one of those wonderful persons that I met for the day. And my phone was ringing down. That calls from certain quarters to highlight the fact that this individual was in a picture with me on Facebook. I wasn't even sure who was the individual they were talking about. And Miss Pierre, please, 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 take it on quick. When did we get to that level? When did we get to that level where a person who takes a picture with you would be so afraid for his job? When did we get to that stage where you're walking in a community and somebody says to me, let's talk by the side. Don't take a picture. Don't take a picture. I don't want them to see me. You know they're going to take my job from me. You know, I salute, and I'm going to call her name this morning because it appears she's no longer afraid. She's a listener of your program, Paula. When we went to Clogier, and I'm going to state this because I don't think she's going to mind. We went to Clogier, and the person who was doing the interviews asked Paula, would you want to say how this project affects you? And both myself and Dario at the same time, it shows you what's happening in our society at this time. Both of us at the same time say, no. Now, could you imagine why? Paula was told if she's seen in any NNP activity, she's going to lose her job. What is her job? Road maintenance. And you know what she turned and said? I was shocked. She said, I'm not afraid anymore. And I said, that is when people are beginning to understand their rights. When people are beginning to understand that we are first Grenadians. And whoever we choose, everybody can be NNP. That wouldn't be the best, in the best interest of Grenada. Everybody cannot be NDC. But when you have the Prime Minister on a platform saying everybody should be NDC.
It's sad.
It is sad for democracy. And I'm saying this to say this morning that we are one Grenada, one people, and Grenada must always be at the top of what we consider when we think about politics. It must never be about NDC and NNP and any other P. It must be Grenada first. And we must control our utterances or statements by understanding we are first one people, God's children. Second, we are Grenadians. And any other thing after that.
Thank you very much for being on the program. Next time you come, we're going to speak about when leaders speak, people follow. I like that because
You're absolutely
I like
right.
to spend some time on the things that are not tangible. I hardly speak about buildings and stadium. I don't speak much about these things because they are easy to see, but the things that are not tangible. And we're going to spend some time on Christianity too. You know, it's important, you know. Some people, you go down the road, they say, oh, you could be a Christian. You don't need home shop every day. And some people afraid to pray for their children and bless their children and say, love your neighbor as thyself. And we, these saltless Christians, and them, look how we pray too. So, next time.
What you said is about this
on
and that. So I'm prepared for this and that, whatever it
it's
is.
very important for people to feel proud of themselves and their belief and their culture and themselves. Thank
But
you very much.
let me just say this final thing. I want to commend
You're a
you.
politician. You must say
Yeah, a final word. Let me commend you for creating an opportunity for people's voices to be heard. Those callers who call in, those people who want to express themselves, those people who are not afraid to speak. I commend you for that.
Thank you very much.
Studio Galaxy 473 in Conferro. We freedom of speech is